My beautiful people, today we are working on ethnographic field note writing. And so essentially what we're doing with the research within the class is something very similar to this. We'll have to write some field notes. We'll talk about field notes as well later on, but let's begin with what we have here today. I cannot see very well because this is really tiny, so bear with me. All right, there we go. I didn't make these slides, as you can see. I am not Robert, but I did find these on Prezi, and you don't always have to reinvent the wheel. That's all it is. Prezi is like PowerPoint, but it's already on. It's online. All right. All right, so ethnographic participation is a central part or a central aspect of field studies where you as the researcher, you immerse yourself in everyday lives of people that you are trying to study. So this direct engagement, it helps the ethnographer gain the nuanced understanding of behaviors, of different social interactions, and the context in which these things take place. So by participating in the environment, ethnographers here, what they do is they observe how individuals interact with each other and with their surrounding, which truthfully allows for a richer and a more contextualized insight into human behavior. So here, the researcher does more than just observe at a distance. They often interact with the group or the community, and again, as we said before, the whole idea of this participation is to gain a deeper understanding and a deeper access into the culture and the social norms. And with it, you get to capture the lived experiences and make sense of these lived experiences, their routines, the rituals of the day-to-day lives of the people that you are observing. And so it is essential for building rapport, fostering trust, and so forth. Now, carrying out this research involves two main or core activities. These things are participation, observation, and documentation. As you know, you probably, let's see, it is now 12:37. Most of you hopefully have been up since about 8. Who remembers truthfully what they had for breakfast without really thinking about it? All right. Who remembers what you guys had for breakfast yesterday? Yep. A lot less people from the people that are here. Why? Because we tend to forget details. Okay. So a lot of times what happens if we don't document things, we forget that they happen, or we forget the details that have happened if we don't document them. Okay. So it's not only enough to participate in observing, but you also have to document what you saw as well. So those are the two ideas. And so when we're talking about documentations, we are talking about field notes, we're talking about quick jotting, we're talking about time to go back and reflect and write what we had or what happened. It's kind of like journaling, but for research. Okay. All right. Makes sense so far? We're good? Keep in mind, I really can't see you guys, and I have to sit on this because otherwise I can't see. Maybe I have to sit on this one. But I have no idea what is actually written on the board, so let's find out. All right. So consequential presence. So the concept of consequential presence in the data refers to this idea that the ethnographer's presence within the group influences how people participate, how they behave, and how they speak. And so individuals might modify their behavior when they know that they're being observed, which could affect the authenticity of the data that is being collected. And so this phenomenon is inherently challenging for the participant observation because the researcher's presence could alter the way they react and the way they seek to be observed. An example I like to give is that when you talk to your friends, you may use a lot of swear words. But when your mom is around, you will not, or hopefully you do not use these swear words, and you're more cautious of the words that you're using, right? Yes, we're very much, oh, no, I'm sorry, mom, right? I should not have behaved this way. Why? Because different people elicit different types of reactions. With that said, the same thing happens when researchers are present. Because you feel like you are being watched and you are being tested, this is what's going on, okay? So you have to be aware as a researcher, you have to be aware of your impact on the setting, and you have to strive to minimize the influence that you exert into that place. So by blending into this environment and taking on a more passive role in observation, what you are doing really is reducing that effect and how the people, the participants, or the people you are observing understand your role and your presence. So that is that. With that said, when we talk about field notes, there's really no particularly correct way of there's no like a singular correct way of writing field notes because the interpretation of data depends on the researcher's perspective and on the context of the study. So researchers may choose to emphasize certain aspects while ignoring others based on what they consider to be important. Okay? So this means that field notes are inherently subjective and shaped by the researcher's focus and/or interest. So for example, let's say you are looking at the frequency of the color red in clothing this, whatever, fall season, okay? So you go to the mall and you set up there and you're watching people come in and out and you're tracking or you try to observe how many people are there. Now, this is obviously, the result would be more of a qualitative research, but let's go with it, right? You're sitting there at the mall, you're watching people, and you're watching out for the color red. If you also ran another experiment where you had to see foot traffic in that area of the mall, seemingly those two people, one that's looking for the color red and one that's looking for the foot traffic, they're doing the same thing. They're sitting there and they're observing. But the difference is what they are looking for. Yeah, does that make sense? Mm-hmm. So in one of them, you're sitting there looking for the red, and the other one, you're looking for how many people went where. Yeah? And so this is why there's no right, correct way to take notes. It's more of, this is what is important, this is what I'm going to highlight, and I'm going to ignore the rest of this. Does that make sense? This is why there isn't necessarily a correct way of saying, oh, this is it, and there is no other way. Okay. There are, however, several key factors that you have to look into when you are writing notes. Yes. Or 4 implications that you have to look into when you are reading notes. One is what is observed and recorded becomes treated or gets to be treated as data. This means that observations are not just passive, but they are actively shaped and framed by the researcher's lens. The second thing is that researcher needs to pay special attentions to significant details that are going on that might go unnoticed at first glance. These small, really just crucial things, crucial elements can reveal so much about the people that you are studying because a lot of things are nuanced. If it was that obvious, you probably wouldn't need to conduct that research. The third thing we're looking at is field notes must allow for the generalization of information, meaning they should offer data that can be applied beyond just one specific event or instant. And then the last thing, which is the fourth thing, the notes should also contain details of social and interactional processes. So capturing not just what happened, but how it happened and why it happened. And this attention to a process can really just help identify or clarify the underlying structure of interaction in groups being studied. Cool? Awesome. Questions? Beautiful.
Well, when you ask what is observed and treated as data, I guess just about anything can be. Now, whether it's misinformation or not, you gotta do deeper search or something.
Sorry, I missed that part. What did you say?
You'd have to go back to the previous
Oh.
slide.
It's okay. Is it important?
No, I was just saying like, when it asks the question, what is treated as data? I can't remember exactly how it was worded. I was gonna say, I think just about anything that we read can
Well,
be.
No, it has to be specific to what you're looking for.
Well, yes, but I'm just saying, like, when you look at it and you read it and it is specific to it. We might not know at first if it's misinformation. And that would require deeper research.
Sure. Something along those lines. All right, so now we're going on to documenting both activities and the emotional responses in this ethnographic research and how that also is important. We're not just talking about what happened, but what are the emotions that are associated with it. So here, the activities that the research witnesses, they are, whether they're just gatherings or rituals or informal social interactions, whatever the case is, they provide essential insight into the group's culture, which is equally important as the emotional responses that they have from these interactions. Okay, so emotional responses, they need to be recorded as well, because what they do is that they help the researcher understand participants' motivations, they help them understand their values and their concerns. And this, again, is very much applied in all kinds of research, particularly in marketing when you're talking about consumer behavior, okay? What kind of emotions are you soliciting from or eliciting from these people? When you are in the field, you really have to position yourself in a way that enables you to capture significant events, interactions, and or phenomena. So getting into place means that the researcher actively seeks out meaningful moments and adjusts their roles in the field to observe and record these moments effectively. So this sometimes means taking a backseat to whatever it is that you're observing. And at other times, it means being involved and asking questions and interacting and finding out why, the how, the where, by eliciting information, by asking and saying, what do you think, right? Okay. So experimental style of writing field notes, it really just involves delaying the process of documentations, which means that you are holding off writing for hours or even days, relying on memory to reconstruct the event later, while, and this is kind of like when you journal at the end of the day, or maybe once a week, you sit there and you journal what happened during your week. That would be experimental style. And what that does is that it allows you to be fully engaged in the field. It allows you to be fully present. However, the limitation is that you might remember or miss details if memory fades. So if it's too far away, right? If I asked you to remember what you did 2 weeks ago, you may struggle in order to do that. And so this is the same concept. Participating to write style involves writing while still immersed in the field. And so ethnographers might make quick jots or mental head notes while interacting, then expand on these notes later. So it's kind of like for your memories, things that trigger your memories as you are doing this, so that you can, so that it reminds you for when you are actually doing and writing your notes. I lost the mouse. There it is. Does you see it? I don't see it. You see it? I really don't see it anymore. There it is. Found it. We moved it, right? Okay. All right, so jottings are quick, short notes that researchers use to capture fleeting emotions, observations, and interactions in the field. So these notes often serve as mnemonic devices to help you remember the things that you're looking for. The choice of when and how to make jotting notes depends really on the situation. So researchers, or as a researcher, you need to balance the need for the details that you're looking for and potential for disturbing the natural flow of the interaction. So taking notes too openly might cause participants to alter their behavior. They become self-conscious, self-aware. Like, what are you writing? Why are you writing this? What, you know? Have you guys seen Brooklyn Nine-Nine? No one's seen it? Okay, we'll move on.
Is it a TV show?
Yeah, it's a TV show. All right. So ultimately, researchers develop personal systems for making these notes, kind of like when you're writing notes for your classes. You need to be able to read them, but hopefully the other people that are reading them as well can understand them. But the whole point is you're writing these notes so that you can remember, so that you can learn. Okay. Did I move it? Did I change it? It's still the same? Oh. So participation is a core part of ethnographic research, and it helps the researcher, as we said, gather the details needed for comprehensive field notes. During that participation, you, as the ethnographer, you are encouraged to take notes of sensory impressions. So things like sounds, things like sight, smell, and even the taste of the environment that you're in. So it's more than just words on a paper. You're really taking this entire experience and you are writing it down. So if we were to write something of what's happening in the class, I'll talk about if I'm to use my sensory memory or my senses, I would say that I hear the sound of the laptop ventilating. I hear the clacking of the sounds. I hear the tapping of the foot. I hear the opening of bottles within this classroom. Makes sense? Okay, so you're using all of it, even the smell. Maybe there's a smell of dust in the air. So you really have to pay attention to the physical environment, the layout, the noise levels, the objects that influence the behavior, and people's appearances as well. Maybe their race, their gender, their mannerism, that provides context for the interactions that are being studied. And what these things do is that they help you complete or create a complete picture of the group or community, ensuring that the field note captures not just what people do, but how they navigate their surroundings. Okay, so jotting down things as mnemonic devices. So what words or phrases? So jotting are not just hurried notes, but also mnemonic devices that help the researcher recall a broader sense or interaction when reviewing their data. So to make the most out of jotting, you really have to focus on recording the key components of the observed scenes. So for example, noting sensory details such as visual, auditory, or kinetic experience can help spark your memory when revisiting the field notes. You can also relate it to things. When I was sitting on the chair on the far right corner, and that triggers your memory into taking you back to that particular place. So researcher here, what your role is to avoid generalization and really just strive for a concrete detail in your jotting. And so vague or overboard statements can really just dilute the richness of the data. So you want to be specific. You're writing specific actions, dialogue, sensory experience that can help the data become more rich and more full. One second. All right. Mhm. So the primary goal of ethnography is the immersion into real life, the real life world of the people that are being studied, which is something that we've mentioned. And so you often will find yourself as a researcher among some marginalized group, neither fully an insider nor fully an outsider. And this marginality can be a little bit of a dangerous zone because it allows you as a researcher to observe a social dynamic from a unique perspective. It enables you to ask questions and seek clarifications that insiders might take for granted. Why? Because you're close enough to be an insider, but not really quite there, which allows you to ask questions that other people are there so numb to it that it just becomes their norm. So close enough to be to understand the group's inner workings while retaining enough distance to critically analyze what is happening. Coding and memoing, there we go. Coding and memoing are really essential part of this ethnographic research as well. And what coding does is that and this is again within jotting down notes, within taking down data, and coding involves breaking down the field notes that you have into these meaningful and categories that help you make sense of the data. And so this is usually done in two phases. You have open coding and you have focused coding, and there are softwares that help you do that, by the way. Open coding involves reading through the field notes and identifying recurring themes or patterns, and focused coding narrows these themes and organizes them into subcategories based on specific ideas and or topics. Memos are the researcher's way of writing reflective notes that capture your thoughts, insights, and emerging theories as you analyze your data. And so memos, what they do is they help you as a researcher think critically about the themes that are emerging within your data, things that you're constantly seeing, trends that keep showing up. All of these things come from the memos, and they really just have to relate to the overall research question. And the whole concept here is to guide you as the researcher into a deeper understanding and a deeper analysis so that you can make a better, more conclusive conclusion. So when you are coding field notes, there are some things that you have to ask and think about clearly and critically as you develop these notes. So some of the things are, what are people doing and what are they trying to accomplish? How are they doing it? What strategies or methods are they using? And mind you, all of these actually apply to different areas. So if you're studying psychology, you can use these questions. If you're studying sociology, if you're studying consumer behavior, if you're studying marketing, if you're studying whatever it is, they all fall into the same category. What are these people doing and what are they trying to accomplish? How are they doing it? And what strategies or methods are they using? How do people talk about or interpret their actions? What assumptions are being made in these interactions? What did I learn from the notes? And why are they significant? And the entire idea is to find social patterns. The entire idea is to get to the trends and really think about what is happening there. So let's talk a little bit more about coding. And coding really, we are labeling concepts and categories as researchers. And so this is based on observations, on conversations, and on settings. And so the goal is to identify all possible themes, then gradually refine them into more focused goals. As you go through your data, you find things that are repeating, and as they're repeating, you put them into categories. And then qualitative analysis is an iterative process that involves noticing things, collecting data, and analyzing it to uncover deeper meanings. And so coding is an essential part that helps the research understand these things and break down large data into smaller pieces so that you actually have a conclusive finding. Writing memos is, again, we talked about memos earlier, but really they include marginal notes or comments written along the field notes. That it's almost like, do you remember when you used to, in your English classes, you used to analyze a passage and you'd have to highlight and you'd have to write in the margins and things like that? Yeah, you guys remember this? I only hear one person. Other people took an English class before? Yes, okay. So you remember writing those notes? This is almost the same thing. That would be memo writing, okay? And these, what they do is they help the researcher remember key moments and reflect on their significance. And what you want to do is you want to write reflective notes that really question your assumptions and ideas, or provide answers for your assumptions, ideas, or biases that you are going through to further your findings and to be able to confirm it or deny it, whatever the case is. So when you are doing this ethnographic research, you really just have to select core themes that will shape the analysis. The themes that we're looking for, they're actually, they come from emerging patterns in the data or from researchers' insight on what is the significance for the group. And so some themes may be based on the amount of data collected. Other themes may reflect maybe like a reflection of the concerns of the group, of the members themselves, things that they have said, things that they've confessed. And so selecting the theme is a very, very critical process because it helps you determine the focus of your final analysis. And so you really must be careful not to lose sight of the broader context or the overall or the over focus on a specific theme at the expense of others. So you really have to align it because we're humans and we get sidetracked all the time. It becomes easy for us to lose track if we're not focused on what the research actually entails and what the research is for and or about. Make sense?
Yes.
So we have to make sure that it always aligns.
Definitely buildings here on top of it.
Focus coding, we mentioned earlier, but really this is where you as a researcher, you refine and elaborate on the initial codes. So this involves building up the categories and connecting data that may not have been immediately related. And so this process, it helps you identify the sub-themes that exist and the variation within broader topics. And what focus coding does is that allows you as the researcher to really just delve into that data a little bit deeper and distinguishing between the different types of interactions or behaviors that initially seemed similar. So with focus coding, what you're doing is really just developing a more detailed and a more complex understanding of the group. And so here you're identifying both the commonalities and the variations within the individual themes and within the individual groups themselves and the environment. And so essentially what happens is these details that you form within the focus group or within the focus coding, they lay the foundation for your final conclusion and your final analysis. Interactive memos are very important because they allow you to really just delve deeper into the data by exploring the relationship between the codes and the field notes. So they are related. And what you're doing is linking very discrete observations to one another. And so when you begin to identify these themes and trends that are emerging, and you begin to link these themes together, it becomes a sustained examination. And here, what the memos do is that they serve as this analytical bridge between what you are observing in broader pattern of the study and what you are observing to the broader patterns of the study. So what's happening overall in general. And so these memos are very important. And the idea here, or the challenge here, is that you have to decide which themes are actually important and should be prioritized. Because again, when you're emerging yourself, there is an overstimulus, right? You're overwhelmed with so many things that are happening around you that you can lose sight. So you have to be really focused, again, on what are the themes, what are the sub-themes, and the elements that you are going to focus on, and which themes should be left on the side notes. Right. And then the final thing that we are going to talk about is reflections. And reflections is really just about creating theories from footnotes, from field notes. And so here, what you're doing as a researcher is using an interactive method, which contrasts the deductive approach often used in social science. And so here you are generating new theories based on data collected during fieldwork, whereas deductive methods aims to test the pre-existing theories against new data. So because you went out into the fieldwork, you observed something, and that something was different, and trends emerged, then you developed almost a theory, whereas what normally happens within an experiment is that you have a theory and you go out and collect data to prove or disprove that theory. And this is where things are a little bit different within ethnographic research and ethnographic research. So ethnographers strive to really just remain open-minded and refrain from imposing their preconceived notions into the observation. Because you're not out there trying to prove a phenomenon, you're trying to explain it or understand it, or why does it exist in the first place, which is why you have to steer away from the bias that you may have, and you have to be aware of them, because once you're aware of them, then you can navigate them as well. And that, my friends, by the way, it takes a lot of understanding of your inner self as you place yourself in these places as well. And so you discover new issues and ideas directly from the lived experience of the subjects you are studying. And when you reflect on these experiences, you can generate meaningful, data-driven insight into a social phenomenon. Any questions? All right, my friends, that is it for this lecture. We'll talk about more things in the upcoming lectures as well.